But why, CJ? I want to run this cycle for f***'s sake. Look, I hear you, and you're probably disappointed with that, but let me explain why. What's up, guys? I had a few comments on another video of mine from guys that said they were overweight and they wanted my thoughts on using steroids to lose fat and get into better shape, which is totally understandable. So I thought I'd make a video about how lean you should be before you start a cycle and just go into why, because it's more important than you probably think. The problem is these guys are misunderstanding how steroids actually work, and they seem to think that they're these magical potions that when you take them, you suddenly get lean and get huge. And that's definitely not the case. Yes, it's true that steroids increase your metabolism, and some even have unique fat burning properties. For example, Anavar reduces visceral fat and upregulates the T4 to T3 conversion process. And Trenbolone has been shown to have thermogenic properties too. However, these should be thought of as nothing more than welcome added benefits and not the primary mechanism of action, which is building muscle. Using them as fat loss tools is like using a fork to eat soup with. Yeah, it'll eventually do the job, but really it's the wrong tool. You'd be better off using a spoon, or in this case, a fat burner like yohimbine, clenbuterol, or a GLP-1 agonist, obviously in combination with a calculated and controlled calorie deficit and added cardio. So with that said, how lean should you be before you start a cycle? Really, the leaner the better. I think you should have visible abs. And don't worry, before you freak out, I don't mean completely chiseled. A vague outline is adequate. In terms of body fat percentage, for most guys, this is probably 12 to 14%, so very doable. And that's what I would say really is the cutoff point. Any more than that, and I would hold off on the cycle and get yourself leaner first. But why, CJ? I want to run this cycle for f***'s sake. Look, I hear you, and you're probably disappointed with that, but let me explain why. What are steroids for? If you answered building muscle, you're spot on. They should be used as a force multiplier in a phase where you want to maximize muscle growth. And to maximize muscle growth, what do you need? You need a calorie surplus. This means that unfortunately, some degree of body fat gain will be part of the package. So really, the leaner you are before you start the cycle, the more runway you have to bulk and build muscle before too much body fat is accumulated to the point where you need to draw the line and dial back the calories. If you like this content, make sure you like the video. It does help me out a ton. Cheers, guys. Not only that, but there's plenty of health benefits to starting a cycle leaner. Here they are. Lower blood pressure. Generally, the more body fat you have, the higher your blood pressure is going to be. If you had the same individual at 8% body fat and at 25% body fat, the version with 8% body fat would have lower blood pressure. Now, whether that's enough to cause a problem is another question. But when you add another risk factor on top of that, in this case, adding in anabolics that raise blood pressure too, it could be a recipe for disaster that could easily be avoided. Secondly, you'll have a harder time managing estrogen. Having less body fat reduces aromatization rates. The majority of aromatase enzymes that facilitate testosterone's conversion into estrogen are actually in adipose tissue. So the less fat you have, the less aromatization you'll get. This makes estrogen easier to manage, and for some guys, it may be the difference between needing an AI and not. Another benefit to starting leaner is that you'll have improved insulin sensitivity. Excess body fat eventually leads to insulin resistance, reducing the ability to burn fat for fuel. A leaner physique is more responsive to anabolism, and having lower body fat improves nutrient partitioning. This means more of the calories you consume will go towards muscle growth rather than fat storage. There's also less risk of diabetes and metabolic issues, improving long-term health and performance, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to. Next up, improved workout endurance. Being leaner improves stamina, meaning you'll be able to work out for longer and really push it in those high rep sets. And this is actually key when you're trying to build muscle with steroids, as it's often advantageous to use slightly lower weight and focus on time under tension and use extra volume, extra reps, and extra sets as the main drivers of overload, as opposed to just piling more weight on the bar. I go into detail as to why this is beneficial in another video. I'll put it on the screen. I think it's called training natural versus enhanced. Higher body fat lowers your VO2 max, meaning the body becomes less efficient at delivering oxygen to muscles during prolonged activity. Also, excess fat reduces mitochondrial efficiency, meaning that it can make it harder for muscles to sustain endurance efforts. Having more body fat puts your body in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, especially visceral fat, which increases pro-inflammatory cytokines. Chronic inflammation disrupts mitochondrial function, leading to oxidative stress and reduced ATP or energy production. The damaged mitochondria become less efficient at using oxygen, further impairing endurance. Finally, and this one seems obvious, but the follow-up cut will be easier. If a cutting phase is needed later on, it will be shorter and less extreme, allowing you to preserve more muscle as opposed to a long drawn out cut where you maybe have more than 10% body fat to lose. Something else to consider here too is that if you've spent your bulk blasting gear, then ideally you want some time off to give your body a break and restore your health. Whether that's pulling back to a TRT or a cruise or doing a PCT, that's up to you. I think I'm going to do a video soon about the pros and cons of blasting cruise versus cycle and PCT. So if you're interested in that, drop it in the comments and let me know. Lowering the dose or dropping the gear entirely is cutting out a major factor of anabolic signaling via the androgen receptor and the liberation of the glucocorticoid receptor, which is your body's main catabolic hormone. So that's 2 additional catabolic factors as well as the calorie deficit. So really you want to minimize this period in order to maintain as much muscle you gain from the bulk as possible. It's much easier and quicker to cut to 8% body fat from 15% than it is from 20%. So with all that in mind, I'd highly recommend being as lean as possible before you start your cycle, both from a results and a health standpoint. I just wanted to clear that up really. This is what's worked for me and some of the guys that I work with, but ultimately you can do what you want. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Like the video, subscribe for more of this content. Enhancedplayer.com is the blog. Bye for now.